In this film, guys, we shall be taking a look at the new Indiana Jones movie in the Indiana Jones franchise, which is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So without further ado, let's get into today's review. Let's get into it. So I thought then that this Indiana Jones movie fell flat on its face, and it was no surprise to many of us. I think they've tried it now with Jurassic Park, they've tried it with several old 80s, 90s franchises like Terminator. There's tons of those now, and loads of those have been fails. When are these movie studios going to learn that they can't just keep turning out and rolling out new sequels and expecting people to enjoy them? This was another case of that. Harrison Ford looked too old in it. He looked like a old man who forgot to take his meds. I think that's just where Indiana Jones is now. I think it's become a little bit of a laughing stock, bit like Star Wars has over the past few years, in which is that the 2008 movie didn't need to be made, and now they've made this one, and it wouldn't surprise me if they tried to churn out another one just for the sake of it, and that's what disappoints me. If you have an actual story that's worth telling, then go ahead and tell it. But if you've got nothing new to add to what's already there, then you may as well not bother. And that's what I think these big movie studios need to realise. Stop using these franchises as big money grabs. If you've got a story to tell that's worth it, go ahead. Let the fans see it. But this wasn't the time. I think Harrison Ford's too old now to play Indiana Jones. I think that with the flashback scenes, they did a good job at hiding his weaknesses of him not being able to run as quick as he did back in the day, and I think they actually managed to replicate sort of what Indiana Jones was back in the earlier Indiana Jones movies 1, 2 and 3, and I think they managed to capture that within the flashback, so it felt a little bit like a blast to the past of seeing good old Indiana Jones. But the stuff after that I don't think quite delivered because it was old man Indiana Jones. I think that the opening of old Indiana Jones's part after you get the flashback at the beginning, I think that opening of first getting introduced to the old Indy and seeing what his life is like post hanging up the hat and whip, I think it was good to see that obviously things aren't good in his life at the minute with his separation with Marion. And also that people do not give a shit about his lectures no more. And by the looks of things, this was his last lecture of sorts. He's retiring, he's hanging up from that sort of thing. And it just looks like he's heading into retirement when obviously his goddaughter comes along, in which we see her father in the flashback scene with the dial. And obviously there's a load of other things that say that Indiana Jones's friend obviously got distracted and overwhelmed by this dial and couldn't stop thinking about this dial, and so the goddaughter obviously heard about it and wanted to look for it herself, only to try and sell it, in which, okay, it was different, but I didn't really like that side of things. I think they kept in the good stuff, the car chases, in which we're used to seeing in Indiana Jones movies. We saw several excavations of places, the going to look for the item at the end. I think they've always got that villain versus normal guy, and the villain always looks like he's going to win till Indy comes on top. They've always got that sort of thing going on, so they had those important threads, so at least they watched the old films back and tried to copy what they did, or copy the same sort of template as what the original movies did, although I don't think it quite came off how it should have. Although I think this movie missed his son in this movie, because that's what this movie should have been, his son taking over as Indiana Jones, really. That's what we all wanted from this 5th installment, however that didn't happen. And instead what we saw was him being revealed as dead in this particular movie, and that screams to me that either Shia LaBeouf did not want to come back to this particular movie, that Shia LaBeouf refused to come back to this movie, or that he weren't asked to come back to this movie and they just went, right, we're killing him off. In which says to me that they wasted a good storyline of him potentially taking over, unless he isn't dead. That would be a cool thing altogether, but that's not the case by the looks, as obviously his son's now dead. In which is a real shame, and I think they've wasted a good storyline there. I think it weren't obviously expected that his plan would be to dominate the world during World War II, because obviously Germany lost the war, and he wanted to reverse that by not only killing Hitler but taking over Hitler in 1939 to then win the war after seeing the mistakes that were made by Germany, and knowing now what he knows, he would be able to go back and win the war, in which was an interesting dynamic for the villain to have. I think that really showed that he had sour grapes about Germany not winning the war, in which obviously they would have, and I think it just made sense from his point of view as a Nazi to want revenge in some way, shape or form, and to be getting this dial so he could go back in time and do so, I think made reasonable explanation to wanting to get the dial to go back in time. I think that the ending was very predictable in my opinion, and I think that although we didn't expect certain things to happen, like Indiana Jones wanting to stay in during Roman times, I think a lot of what happened we sort of saw coming, the villain dying or the villain getting killed somehow, and then Indiana Jones coming out on top in some way, shape or form, like he always does, and reclaiming the object. And I think in this particular scenario, I think it was interesting how when Waller gets killed during the Roman times, he didn't mean to go to the Roman times. He was actually aiming to go back to 1939 to kill Hitler, and he miscalculated. So he ended up going to the wrong time zone, in which was like Indiana Jones's wet dream, let's be honest, of going back to that time period. And he was loving it there, even though he had been shot. He was absolutely loving it there and wanted to stay there. And as well as this, we got to find out how the watch ended up with the dial, and it came off Waller's wrist. They took it off his wrist and was like, here, go make this machine so that we can come here and help you down the line, sort of thing. And it was quite interesting that, because I was wondering how they would link the watch, and yeah, they end up going to the Roman place by an accident. That's how they end up getting the watch, and it linked full circle in a way that was good. And there was a point in time where you thought maybe Indiana Jones is gonna stay and live rest of his life out there, which wouldn't be long because he obviously got shot, but then he ended up getting knocked out and then taken back to the modern day. Finally, and I thought that the actresses did a decent job, as we saw the likes of Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller Bridge, Antonio Banderas, Rhys Davies, Shaunette Renee Wilson, Thomas Kretschmann, Toby Jones, Mads Mikkelsen, Karen Allen, and Nasser Memarzia. To summarise this Indiana Jones sequel then, I think it's just plain average, shouldn't have been made, hence why I rate this movie a 6.5 and an average film. So let me know down in the comments down below what your thoughts are. Is it good, is it bad, is it terrible, is it amazing? Let me know down in the comments down below, please. Also, we have noticed not enough people have been hitting that subscribe button, so please do let me know. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Later.